Hi, good evening. My name is Rainer. This is my channel, Rainierbooks, and welcome to a new tag video, which this time might come out late on a Thursday night or early on a Friday morning Swedish time, because that's where I live. I live in Stockholm, Sweden. Välkommen till Sverige. Välkommen till Stockholm. Uh, Today, it's a tag video about the favorite author tag. I was tagged by Brian from Bookish in this tag that was made by Nicole Rojas. And let's go for the favorite author tag. And of course, as always, let's get started. Here I am with the favorite author tag, and this is a very interesting tag because it asks for your favorite author, all about your favorite author. And the first question is, surprise, surprise, who is your favorite author? I have thought about this for a while. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy question. And I really thought about this for a long time. And because I have read 2 books, 3 books by a lot of authors, but not the whole work, the whole bibliography of things that they have given out. And there are just a few authors where I really could say I have read everything that they have ever written. So they have ever published. And so I went for a surprise that might surprise you. And for an author that is underestimated and not so well known, I think, by many people. My favorite author is drums. My favorite author is Eric Ambler. Who is Eric Ambler? He was born in 1909 in London, England, and he died in 1998 in London, England. So he's a British author. He wrote mostly spy novels and thrillers, and he has written really a bunch of them. And he's the author I want to speak about in this video. When and how did you discover this author? Very good question, isn't it? When did you discover this author? I don't know exactly when I discovered him. It was a long time ago because I'm an old man. You look at an old man from Sweden, that's actually from Germany. And this happened in Germany way back in the 1970s somewhere. I think it could have been 1976, 1977, when the Olympic Games in Montreal were played, or before the World Championships in soccer in Argentina were played in 1978. I think it was before Argentina. It must have been 76, 77, something like that. I went to the library in Odenkirchen, which is a part of Mönchengladbach, where I come from in Germany. I was born and raised in Odenkirchen, and I lived on von der Helmstraße. That was the street where I lived all those years ago. And my father had a little shop in the center of Odenkirchen, and very close to the shop was a library, the local branch of the library of Mönchengladbach, or at the time of Reit, Mönchengladbach. And I went to that library with its squeaking floors, wooden floors, and it was a new world to me. And I discovered one day a book that was called Dirty Story by Eric Ambler. It was called Schmutzige Geschichte in German, with a German translation that was published by Diogenes. The publisher was Diogenes. And I wanted to read that because as a 14, 15-year-old, you're always interested in dirty stories. Unfortunately, I have to admit that. And so I borrowed that book, and it was a book not about things that I might have imagined at the time. It was a book about a man called Arthur Abdel Simpson, who was a coward, who was living in Cairo in Egypt, and he had problems in Egypt in the 1960s, I think, staying in Egypt because he had both a British and an Egyptian passport, and the Brits didn't want him to go to England, the Egyptians didn't want him to stay in Cairo, so he was about to get expelled. And what he did was he was contracted by people who wanted to start a coup somewhere in an African country that doesn't exist, in a fictitious African country. And this is a book about resources, about international companies trying to exploit an African country. Very interesting topic, and it was a very interesting novel. Dirty Story by Eric Ambler. That's how I discovered him. Third question. Was it instant love, or did it took time for you to fall in love with his or her books? It was instant love, because I borrowed more books by Eric Ambler after I read the first one. And I was maybe one of his youngest readers, but I really loved the stories. They were very compelling, they were very exciting, they were thrilling, and they also taught me a lot about the world in different parts, because Eric Ambler has written about the world. He's not only a thriller author, he wrote about injustices, about things happening in the so-called third world very often, but also in Eastern European countries, in the Arab-Israeli world and that conflict. So Ambler was very busy in writing about those conflicts, and he explained a lot of things in his novels as well. So I learned so much about him, and it actually fits me quite well, because I'm a historical and political interested human being and learned a lot from Eric Ambler. And many others did, I think. Fourth question is, what is your favorite book by this author? Let me make the lamp. Let me take this lamp here, even if my face now gets super light, but I don't have a red nose anymore, so that's kind of good, isn't it? I still wonder why this video is shooting and shooting and shooting. It's already on 7 minutes and 18 seconds and it doesn't stop. Usually the camera stops. It doesn't here. That's beautiful. My favorite book by this author is this one here. It's The Mask of Dimitrios. The Mask of Dimitrios. I read this book when I was like 17, 18, 19 years old. And I read it in German. I read everything in German at the time, and my English wasn't so good. In German, it was called Die Maske des Dimitrios, and it was published by Diogenes, his publisher in Switzerland. And this is an incredible book. It has blurbs by many books have blurbs, but this book has blurbs by two of the greatest writers of the genre. Graham Greene, who has said, unquestionably our best thriller writer, or John le Carré, somebody that I really deeply admire. He has said, the source on which we all draw. And that's true. Eric Ambler is the source on which the whole work of John le Carré, I could claim, draws, because Ambler wrote those stories about the world and the injustice that happens in the world and packed it into thriller stories, into spy stories. The Mask of Dimitrios is a gripping thriller, still afresh as new, says The Guardian in this re-edition. Let me read this here, because it's a long time ago that I read this. So let me read what the publisher is writing here. Penguin. It's Penguin. English crime novelist Charles Latimer is traveling to Istanbul when he first hears of the mysterious Dimitrios, an infamous master criminal mind whose body has just been fished out of the Bosporus. Fascinated by the story, Latimer decides to retrace Dimitrios' steps across Europe to gather material for a new book. But as he gradually discovers more and more about his subject's shadowy history, fascination tips over into obsession, and Latimer realizes that his own life may be on the line. This is a super thrilling book about the Mask of Dimitrios. It's called The Mask of Dimitrios by Eric Ambler. This is my favorite book by him. It's one of the best books I've ever written. And this is why Ambler is my favorite author, actually, because he was the one who got me to go to libraries, who got me to lend books when I was a teenager, and made me continue to go to libraries and to buy books in the end. So that's why he's my favorite author. That's revealed now. Oh my God, that's a difficult question. What is your least favorite book by this author? Is it possible to pass on questions? I mean, I have read everything that he wrote, really, and all the novels, but I don't recall a book that I did not like by Ambler. I want to name another book that I really like instead of. Is that okay for this question, maybe? Probably not, but I do it anyway, so because I do the tag. And this is the Sherman Inheritance, which is a marvelous book about the history of the 19th century. There is a man called, an elderly woman dies in the United States. And she has millions of money are looking for someone to inherit the money. the Sherman Inheritance. And a young lawyer gets this order by his bosses to possibly find someone who can inherit all this money by this lady. And he is very ambitious, and he is very interested, and so he goes on a long journey. He soon realizes that he has to go to Europe to trace someone who to inherit the money. And he goes back in time, long way back in time, into the Napoleonic Wars, and finally finds traces, and then he finds someone who is a relative to this elderly woman. And this is the Sherman Inheritance. It's such a great novel about history of the 19th century, the Napoleonic Wars and everything, and how history changed the identities of people sometimes, told in a very, very interesting, beautiful way. I had to stop the video for this question. The question was, how many novels have you read by this author? Because I had to count them, and the answer is 17. I read 17 novels of Eric Ambler. I think he wrote 18. I didn't read the first one that is called The Dark Frontier from 1936. But then I read them all until 1981. The last novel that was published is called The Care of Time. Oh, what does best describe this author? What does best describe Eric Ambler? I think that what I said earlier when John le Carré says that he's the source on which we all draw, this is a very, very good description. And people have called him the father of the modern thriller. Len Deighton has said he's the man who lit the way for us all. Frederick Forsyth said he was the man who took the spy thriller out of the gentility of the drawing room and into the back streets where it all really happened. He is the creator of anti-heroes in thrillers, of ordinary people being the main protagonists of thrillers, something that John le Carré has also done in many of his beautiful, great novels that he has written. And this is also some Hitchcockian style, I think. Also, Alfred Hitchcock put people in the middle of his movies, male characters mostly, unfortunately, but nevertheless, he put characters in his movies that are more or less ordinary men who got into big trouble, into situations where he was investigating how do those people react on those situations. And that's what Ambler also did. In his brilliant run of Between Wars novels published between 1936 and 1940, his heroes are of very unexceptional sorts, the quintessence of ordinary people caught up in extraordinary circumstances. That's what crimereads.com is writing here about him. They are often engineers or journalists or writers who stumble unexpectedly into danger through a combination of bad judgment and bad luck, and then have no choice but to try to dig themselves out of it on their own. And that's what Hitchcock did, that's what John le Carré has done very often, and that's what Eric Ambler taught them to do. And that's why I love this author so much, because he can draw you into a novel and make you really identify with the characters, because these characters are normal characters. They are not James Bond or Superman or something like that. They are just ordinary people. And that makes Ambler's novel so powerful and so great. Yeah. I love this tag, actually. Talk about Eric Ambler. That's so beautiful. Yeah, what genre does this author write? I have said it already. Eric Ambler, who passed away 22 years ago, he wrote thrillers. He wrote spy thrillers. He's the father of the modern spy thriller. That's what he did. Why do you love this author? I think I already said it. I answered that question. I should have read the questions before I actually answered the other questions, because I already said it. I love his novels because the people, the heroes are anti-heroes. They are so ordinary that it could be you, it could be me, it could be any one of us who ends up in a situation somewhere in a foreign land, somewhere in a foreign state that mostly he cannot control, and that he has to find a way out of. That's so fascinating about his novels, I think. Another novel that I want to mention is Judgment on Delchev, which is a novel about the trials that were done in the Soviet Union, Stalin, and other countries in the Eastern Hemisphere, in Eastern Europe, in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, so-called Judgment on Delchev, the so-called, I don't know how you call them in English actually, though, the fake trials maybe, because people were accused of something and they were tortured and they were forced to confess things that they hadn't done, and then they were sentenced to long prison terms and even death. Schauprozesse, that was the German title. I have to look it up. Wait a second. I'm sure Britta Böhler, you know it because you're a lawyer. You know what a Schauprozess is. It's called show trial in English. Actually, so easy it is. So Judgment on Delchev is a novel about a very typical show trial. And the final question, I arrived at the final question, and it's very often in those tag videos, it's who do you tag? The first tag goes out to Hannah from Hannah's Books. Who's your favorite author, Hannah? The second tag goes out to Rue from Rue's Reading Corner. Who's your favorite author, Rue? The third tag goes out to Jessica from Jessica Reads Things. Who's your favorite author, Jessica? And the fourth and final tag goes out to Freddie from Sluggish Reader. Who's your favorite author, Freddie? That was all I had to say for today in this beautiful tag video. I have to continue reading my buddy read, which I do with Paula. And the novel is called The Great Offshore Grounds by Vanessa Veselka. And I'm not going to say anything about it. You're going to listen to it very soon, somewhere next week, I think, because it's a pretty long book. It has 450-something pages. Next week, you hear all about Vanessa Veselka and a beautiful video that we are doing. Thank you very much for today. Have a great day as always. Have a beautiful Friday, because Friday is one of the most beautiful days in the week. Thank God it's Friday. That's what people say, don't they? And yeah, it's another weekend around the corner, another weekend in fall. It's getting pretty chilly here in Stockholm. I was out on my Corona walks this week, and I think 2 days ago, day before yesterday, I was freezing. It was 5-6 degrees plus only Celsius, which is 41 degrees in Fahrenheit. 5 degrees is 41 degrees in Fahrenheit. So it's pretty chilly out there, and you have to wear clothes like hoodies and stuff, And I see you soon with my week 42 update on Sunday. And next week, about a week from now, with a video on Vanessa Veselka's The Great Offshore Grounds. Thank you very much for watching this. Have a great evening, and bye-bye.